Hello, I've come to some really beautiful woods near my home, and I wanted to talk about pixies because I'm writing about pixies at the moment, the Dartmoor pixies. There's lots of stories, lots of folklore about them, and I thought it was about time to bring it up to date, up to modern times, and talk about the places they live in on Dartmoor and just introduce them to a new generation, really, because I think their stories are so wonderful and so deserving of bringing into the public consciousness again, especially with young people. And I hope to create some fairy pixie walks alongside my book about the pixies, which I'm researching at the moment. So they're associated with Dartmoor, and there's also piskies in Cornwall as well. So on Dartmoor in Cornwall they're known as piskies, and it's the fairies that are indigenous to this part of the world, to Dartmoor in Devon. So I wanted to share some of my own experiences and thoughts on pixies. And just walking through these woods, I've been thinking about all the things that enabled me to have fairy experiences. So one of the main ways, is to, before I go for a walk, I have an intention of connecting in that way to the fairies, to the pixies, and to really see the environment, the landscape, in an imaginative and heartfelt way. And when I'm walking, I walk with, without sounding corny, it's a genuine thing that I walk with a sense of gratefulness and gratitude for everything I then notice. So if I see a little face or a figure in a tree or in some moss, I feel grateful, and I say, oh, thank you to the face. Or when the sun comes out, as it is today, it keeps coming out and going back in and lights up an area of foliage, and it just looks like gold glistening in the sunshine. I feel so thankful. There's so many times when I'm walking in that way that I get this real feeling of wonder, and that's what we all need to bring back, especially at the moment with what's going on in the world, and in general day-to-day life, just to have that relief, to be able to allow ourselves to see the world around us, to see nature in really imaginative, magical terms. And so that's what I'm writing about, how I see the landscape, and how many people have seen the landscape in this way, imaginatively and from the heart. And we look at Tolkien, how he wrote. He was so inspired by the landscape with his descriptions of the fantastic worlds that he wrote about, and many other writers too, and artists and musicians. So I'm not alone in this. I'm just expressing how more of us can do that, more of us connect with the magic of the fairy realm and see it and experience it for ourselves. So I was thinking about some of the pixie experiences that I've had, and one of them that is really significant to me, and I feel from listening to other people's fairy experiences on various podcasts and things I read online recently, modern day and from the past experiences, is that this experience I had was with my mum. We both had this experience exactly the same time. So I'll just tell you what happened. We were in a place called Heathercombe Gardens that every summer opens up the gardens, and they have a sculpture exhibition in the gardens, and it's just the most magical place in this valley, this combe, which is Devonshire for a valley on Dartmoor. And we were wandering around. This was 2016, summer of 2016. Remember it so clearly. And they actually have a little area near the cafe that they have some like fairy garden ornaments, and like a little fenced off garden. You can go and just wander around. And my mum was just so thrilled, and I was just so thrilled. It was lovely, you know, it really brought out this childish wonder in us. And so we went there and we were, so we're really in this kind of sort of magical childlike place that opened our hearts. And we decided to then walk around the gardens, and we spent some time doing that, admiring the plants and the beauty of the place. And then we were walking back to, you know, towards the end of our time there really, and we were passing a log that was at the side. It was just at the side of the path, a big log, and it was like out of the corner of my eye, I saw at the end of this log a pixie sat on the end of the log, just brown, and he was sat with his knees up on the end of the log, and it was literally at one of those split-second corner of the eye phenomena. And I turned to my mum and I said, "Did you see that pixie?" Sort of thing you say. I said, "Yeah, I thought I saw a pixie on the end of the log." And I said, "Yeah, I did too." We both saw it at the same time. And then as we looked, we saw that it just transformed back into the end of the log. And we'd both seen it from the corner of the eye, split second. And I think that's how I came to understand, I suppose, this idea of faerie shape-shifting that people have spoken about in lots of fairy stories, that they can change form. And that's what I believe as well, is that they can appear in nature, in the barks of tree, in the shape of a log, in the rock, you know, in the landscape, wherever. They can instantaneously become that form, and we might just glimpse them. And I've taken lots of photographs of these faces and figures, and really seeing little figures in these places, and I really believe that is faerie shape-shifting. That's what they do to show themselves. Some people have been lucky enough to see them in front of their eyes as little people, and there's many accounts of that. So what do pixies look like? Now, as I've done my research from folklore, I've realised that my experience of pixies, and I've had a few, that there was that one, and one at a place called Wisman's Wood. They're described as brown-skinned, old-looking. Their clothes are generally described, and this is how I've seen them, as the colours of nature, so browns, greys, greens, and so they really merge into their backgrounds, and that's how I have seen them and experienced them. And I've had an experience at Wisman's Wood where I took a photo. This was back in 2016 again, and looking back at the photos in the evening, I actually posted it in a fairy group I belong to, and somebody said, "There's a figure in the tree." and this was above a rock that went into the woods, a really special place. And it tied in with my experience earlier in the day. So maybe I'll share that story. I have shared it in the group before in written form, but I think I'll tell that story another day because it's quite a long, involved story. Anyway, going back to this experience I had with my mum, that was the summer of 2016. In the January of 2017, maybe about 6 months later, my mum became really ill and she was diagnosed. I ended up caring for her for a while because I find it quite difficult to talk about. It's a very difficult time. She couldn't get up the stairs, and she ended up moving in with me for a month or so because she was so poorly, and she was diagnosed with a type of cancer called myeloma, which affects the bones. It's a type of leukemia. Very thankfully, we managed to get her some respite in a care home for a few months to take the huge weight off my. I mean, it's really difficult caring for my mum with 2 children and on my own, single parent. I was so thankful for that. I really felt like somebody was looking after me, and this was, it was almost like I really believe this, that fairy experiences, they are on the edge of our reality, the fairies. And I felt that because my mum was in that in-between place of life and death that summer, and she didn't know it, because she would have had the cancer then, that we both had this experience together, whereas normally she's not usually open to that sort of thing. When I've shown her the sort of photos I take of, look, there's a fairy, she'll say, oh, she thinks I'm making it up, or thinks that I've, created, done something in Photoshop, or she doesn't even know about Photoshop, but I haven't, And I just, oh, really? Oh, is that real? She doesn't believe it. Yet, at that time, she said to me, I saw a pixie, and that is so out of character for my mum. She's just not very open about these things, or finds it a bit scary. So I found that she's become more and more open to these things, and she's still alive. Bless her, just still very poorly with cancer. But yeah, there's many times that I've felt really guided by the fairies, through, since her diagnosis and before as well, throughout my life. So there's a little story for you. I'm going to continue with my walk now, save my battery on my phone, and go and find a special bridge that a man I just bumped into walking his dog told me about. And I hope to bring people for walks here. I'm going to take friends to start with. Now, once I'm qualified as a guide and all legal, because I need to be have certain insurances and things to guide people on Dartmoor, then I'll bring members of the public here. That's my dream. Lots of love. Have a wonderful day.